we didn't have any hostile fire when we first landed, but that evening, as you know, dusk was coming, and so we um, started to set up a perimeter, started digging our fighting holes, and I think I got about as knee deep, I think, and my fighting hole started filling up with water. This is not good. and then shortly after that, we started getting attacked by artillery. So the artillery rounds were coming over from the DMZ. And so when that's happening, and the artillery sounded like, freight trains running into each other, shrapnel flying everywhere. At the time when I was digging that hole, and I was smoking a cigarette, and I was in a snack bar with a couple of buddies, and I'm in there, and was bragging about, well, I'd probably be blowing out smoke on my last breath, and I'm sure I said other stupid things, but that was pretty stupid, and but I recalled that during that artillery attack, and I was smoking the cigarette. I threw that thing away faster than I could think, and started blowing out that smoke out of my lungs to clear my lungs. And I asked God to forgive me for how I had been carrying on like a silly person. I'm sure I prayed for keep those artillery rounds away from me. But that particular night, and the fighting hole, which was closest to mine on my right, received a direct hit. There were 2 Marines in there. So that was eventful, sad. But after that, then the next day, after the ship started firing back to where the artillery was coming, and then of course the jets came in too, so stopped the bombardment that we were in. And then the next morning we left there, and we started going further into country.
Have you ever started a new job, or maybe you read a book on like leadership, for example, or you had some kind of training where there was a specific topic, and then you go out in the real world and you find yourself noticing these things like it's like they're coming out of nowhere. So for example, maybe you were talking about blue cars and you were extensively training on blue cars for whatever your job is. And then all of a sudden you go out, you're driving down the road, and you can't remember the last time you've ever seen a blue car, and you just saw 30 of them in about 5 minutes. Well, I'm kind of going through something very similar. I started probably back in January. I started going through doing a Bible study. So my family and I, when I was growing up, I grew up Catholic, and I went to Catholic grade school, Catholic high school. We went to mass every Sunday, or actually Saturday night. Went to mass every Saturday night, and I can honestly say during that time, probably didn't read the Bible at all. In fact, I can tell you I didn't. There was only one book in the Bible that I ever read, and that was Revelation. And I believe I was like an 8th grader, or maybe a freshman in high school when I read it. Fast forward several years and kind of stepped away from the church a little bit, had a family, and around COVID, my family and I started kind of getting back into religion again. We decided that we really needed to have a relationship with God. Now, I've always been told on the different podcasts I listen to a wide variety of them. And every single one of them, they all say have said something very similar, that the man of the household in God's eyes should be leading the family to religion. And I thought, well, that's kind of funny because to me, my wife and I, we do a pretty good job at taking care of our family together. We split things equally. We do everything together. But then the more I thought about it, I was waiting for her to tell me that she wants to go back to church. And we had talked about it several times. We talked about going back to the Catholic Church. In fact, we sat down with a a pastor, not a priest, but we sat down with somebody and we had a conversation with them. And it was an opportunity for me to ask a bunch of questions that I had, questions that seemed like nobody could really answer. There was a lot of things that the Catholic Church, and this isn't a bash on them. Again, I grew up in the Catholic Church, but there were a lot of things that I felt the Catholic Church was teaching that I could not find anywhere in the Bible. And the Bible is specifically written as a how to live life in God's eyes. At least that's the way I interpret it. So we sat down, we asked these questions, we had a conversation, and I walked away from there. We both walked away from there, and we didn't really feel like our questions were answered. In fact, now we felt like we had more questions than we did answers. And we just didn't really have this feeling of we're being welcomed back and encouraged to come back. Again, not a bash on the Catholic Church. I feel like any religion could act like that. Fast forward a little bit, and we ended up finding a non-denominational, for lack of a better term, and we started going there quite a bit, and we loved it. We ended up taking a break just because life got busy. We had a kiddo who's now 7 years old, and then around 6 months ago, something just sparked in my brain, said, "You need to start going to church," and I did, and I've been going every Sunday ever since. And I enjoyed it. And I wanted to get to know more people within my church. The best way that I thought, or that I noticed that I could do that, was join a Bible study group, which is a men's group. And I've met some pretty amazing people. Well, as of recently, the latest book that we've been discussing is Revelation. And if you're familiar with Revelation, Revelation has a lot of symbols and a lot of wording that is kind of hard to understand. And you have to be kind of careful when you read it. But we started talking about Revelation. We're only going on to our third session of this book starting this next Wednesday. And since then, I've noticed a lot of the podcasts that I normally listen to are also talking about Revelation. Now, this may not be a surprise to some people, but because let's be honest, a lot of people seem to think that the end times are near and get ready for Armageddon and the 7 years and yada, yada, yada. But I find it interesting that we're having this conversation in a Bible study, and then I start seeing it appear out of nowhere in podcasts and movies and TV shows. And it's like everywhere I turn, people are talking about Revelation. And it's not like what we've heard a few years ago where somebody tries to predict the end of the world is near and that, based off of the Mayan calendar, the world is going to end on this date at this time. No, it's been the exact opposite, actually. People have been talking about this is what the book of Revelation says, and that the book of Revelation is not built on woe is me and caution yourself and be prepared. Quite the opposite. It's actually a book about praising God and worshiping, and it's the revelation of Jesus. So the more I thought about this, the more that I continue to push myself to have a closer relationship with God, I've found myself wanting to talk about him more on my podcast as well. And I received an email, this was probably back in March, from a gentleman by the name of Keith Cole. Now, Keith, who's sitting in my waiting room at the moment, is a Marine Corps Vietnam veteran. Here soon, we're going to bring him on. We're going to talk about his story and talk about the things that he's gone through and how he has formed a closer relationship with Jesus as well. There's one thing that I want anybody and everybody to get out of this episode and really all of the episodes in general coming into the future. And that's I want you to understand why we feel so much happier and why we feel a lot less stress on us today. At least from my perspective, I feel a lot less stress today than I did even 5 years ago since I've started having a closer relationship with God. And I think if you start following in some of these footsteps, you might start seeing the same thing happen to you too. So I'm going to go through Keith's bio here real quick, and then we'll welcome him on the show. So Keith Cole is a Marine Corps Vietnam combat veteran, former CPA, and author of Burnout: God's Recovery Plan, a Marine story of trauma, surrender, and healing through faith. After years of carrying unseen weight from combat, responsibility, and life pressures, Keith discovered that toughness alone cannot heal the soul. Through his work, he helps people who appear strong on the outside but are struggling within find a path to recovery through faith and daily discipline. I think Keith's going to fit in very well with our group of people. We've had some amazing veterans on this show before. We've had some amazing first responders. We've had some business owners. We've had a wide variety of people, and I think Keith is going to bring a great uh, perspective to the show. So let's go ahead and bring Keith in. Hey, Keith, how you doing?
I'm doing just great, Tyler. Thank you very much for having me on your program.
Yeah, thank you for joining. I'm super excited about this. Have you ever had that happen to you where you're, focused on something training wise, or, maybe you read a book or whatever, and then all of a sudden you see it everywhere? You ever had that?
I, it was interesting to hear you say that because uh, whenever I'd buy a new car, I'd buy a certain whatever model it might be, um, and all of a sudden I would start seeing them all over the place. Whereas before, maybe I would never notice one, but then there would be one just identical, and that happens so many times. Whenever I bought a car, it happened over and over again. So yeah, that's kind of strange thing.
Yeah, it's just been really weird. And like I said, you know, uh whenever I hear other people talk about the book of Revelation, it's not like whoever that guy was, I can't even remember what his name was, that was sitting over here saying, well, the Mayan calendar says that the world's going to end. That was like 5 years ago and the world didn't end. It's not like that. It's people actually talking about the book from a Christian standpoint, not from well, here are the signs and the signs are happening right now. And this is why the world is ending. It's not any of that. It's just trying to tell people like, and we never talk, at least when I was in the Catholic community, we never talked about Revelation. There was maybe one time every 6 months that it was a gospel reading, but we never talked about it.
Yeah, I don't. As a kid in church, Um, I don't ever remember the pastor or anybody else talking about Revelations. They may have, but I certainly don't. I can't recall it.
Yeah, I was always kind of pushed away from it. Like I was always told, don't read it because it'll give you nightmares, and because you got all these dragons and weird animals with 7 horns and stuff. And I don't know,
Right.
crazy. So Keith, I think we'll kind of just jump in here. You've got a pretty astounding story, and I'm really excited for this conversation. But let's start off with where you grew up.
Well, I grew up in a small town in Ohio. It was called Cary. Uh, I now live in uh, Bethesda, Maryland, so I'm just outside of Washington D.C. And we have buildings, within blocks of us that have more people in them than my town I grew up in. So it was an interesting thing. I went through high school there, from grade school to high school.
Did you have any siblings?
I'm the seventh child of nine.
9
Nine.
kids.
That's
Holy
right. I have
cow.
eight siblings. Uh,
That's wild. So you were number 7.
I was number seven.
Man, what'd you do for fun?
Well, played as a little kid, just played different types of games and whatever, with uh, neighbor kids. But but also, even at a very young age, I had decided I was going to become a Methodist minister, and I used to play church a lot, and I would preach to my imaginary congregation that would sit on the stairway steps that led to our upstairs in our house. And sometimes, Tyler, I had to call some of those people out for talking during my preaching and had to get to settle them down.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I've noticed my 7-year-old does something very similar. He pretends to be a teacher sometimes, and all of a sudden you'll hear him yell at the kids, and I'm like, "What is going on?"
Yes. Yeah. Well, your son and I like things to be in order.
Yeah. Yeah, I guess so.
Yeah.
So did you do any sports or anything?
Uh, I played football in junior high school, but once I got to high school, then I started working after school.
Gotcha. What did you, I guess let me take a step back. So you would pretend to be a preacher for a church. What was there something that caught your eye that had you super interested in that? Did you have a good preacher that you liked, or what started that?
Well, we had um, a few preachers uh, from time, in our church. Uh, they would change every once in a while. uh, had Dr. Norman Vincent Peale came on one particular instance to our little town, and he preached in our church and in our county, which is also a small county. Billy Graham came and at the fairground, and so I was there to hear him. Those might have had some influence.
I would say Billy Graham probably had a pretty good influence,
Yeah.
seeing him come around. Very nice. So you said you started doing some work when you got into high school. What were you doing?
I worked in a grocery store.
Oh, okay. Um, so when did you join the military?
Well, when I was a senior in high school, my dad, who was a railroader, so my dad started working on the railroad when he was 17, and he worked straight through. Uh, when he was 52, he had a stroke and he died. And what when that happened, um, my reaction to that was quite rebellious. Um, I blamed God for not answering my prayer, for not saving my dad, and so I blamed everything on God and uh, just pretty much turned my life upside down. And
How old were you?
I was a senior, so I was hadn't turned 18 yet. I was 17 at the time. I was actually I was a week, yeah, 1 week away from becoming 18. And so uh, at that point, I decided I'll graduate, I'll get through high school, and then I'm going into the Marine Corps. I had three older brothers who had been in the Marines. Uh, they were in between um, the in between Korea and Vietnam, so they uh, were not in combat, and so uh, as a kid growing up and going to be a minister, the Marine Corps doesn't have ministers; they use the navies, and so same as corpsmen, they're in the Navy, not in the Marine Corps, but they're attached to the Marines. So I thought, well, one way I could appease my Marine brothers would be I'll go into the Navy as a chaplain and get assigned to the Marine Corps. So I even had that all planned out. But all that went by the wayside when my dad died and how I reacted.
What was the current pulse like when you were going in? What was the pulse between us and Vietnam at that time?
Um, just, it was every day on the newspaper, every day on television. Um, it was definitely war. And my reaction to that, of course, was, good. I'm 18-year-old stupid kid, So I thought, oh, okay, great, war. That's what I need. Give me more, type of stupidity.
Yeah.
And I enlisted, of course, without telling my mother until after I had done it, and
How did that go over?
yeah, didn't go very well at all,
Yeah.
as you can
I can
imagine.
imagine. Yeah. When you went to the recruiter, what was that conversation like?
um, I don't remember too much. The only thing I kind of remember about that was I was a very fast typist, and so I remember suggesting something about maybe I would work in an office, and he kind of chuckled a little, and he said, "I don't think so."
He had different plans for you, huh?
That's right.
Yeah. So what did you end up going in as?
So I didn't find out until after I got there. Went through boot camp, and then I was told I was going to be a machine gunner. That's a MOS is 0331, and they said you're smarter than these other guys, so you're going to be a machine gunner. I thought, oh boy, if I'm smarter, we're in big trouble here.
What was boot camp like?
Even before I got off that bus, I went to boot camp in San Diego. All my brothers went to boot camp in Paris Island. So I had to take guff for that later too. But the so I get fly out there, flew from Cleveland to San Diego. I got off the plane, got on a bus, and there's some crazy man on that bus, which later I found out was going to be my drill instructor. And he wasn't too violent at the moment, but didn't seem like he was going to be my best friend either. So you we got there, and then it was time to get off that bus. uh, and that was when the trauma began. uh, but the Marine Corps boot camp was tough.
Was it anything similar to Full Metal Jacket?
I never saw a Full Metal Jacket.
You haven't seen Full Metal? Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
That's a good movie. It's kind of brutal towards the end, but it's a good movie. It's a classic.
As a kid, I grew up watching on television World War II movies.
Yeah.
TV shows about World War II and stuff. And when I came home from Vietnam, I never saw uh, another war movie at all.
Yeah, my grandfather was in the Navy in Vietnam, and I have a very young family, but he was in the Navy during Vietnam, and he still tells me to this day, he his goal was he was going to enlist so that he could pick what he wanted to do instead of getting drafted and being told what to do. So he enlisted in the Navy, so that he could be a mechanic on the airplanes. And
Oh,
he said as soon as his time was up, first thing he did, he got right back into Georgia, and he found the nearest dumpster and got rid of everything he owned that was from the military. He wanted nothing to do with it. And quite honestly, um, I can remember going to sporting events with my grandpa growing up, and a lot of I'm sure it's the same where you live, but a lot of these arenas before the event starts, they'll say, if there's any veterans in the house, please stand up so we can thank you properly and things like that. And he always refused to stand up. He did not identify himself as a veteran because he just he didn't want that title. And up until recently, like the last few, probably about 3 years ago, he called me up and he said, "Hey, you know anything about these plane rides that they take veterans from here to Washington D.C. and you can go to the memorial?" I was like, "Yeah." He's like, "Well, could you sign me up for that? And I want you to go with me as my sponsor." And I said, "Absolutely, let's do it." So I signed him up, and then I get a message saying that they appreciate us signing up and they'll get back to us soon, but they're going in order from World War II, Korea, and Vietnam, and we should hear something soon. We haven't heard anything yet. I'm about to sign him up again and see if that kind of helps push things a little bit further, but he's
yeah,
actually interested in going, and it makes me happy.
yeah, sure, good.
So you go through basic, you manage to survive it. That's half the battle. Where do you go from there?
So from that, then we went to advanced infantry training, and then after that, then I went to a machine gun school. And a machine gun is more of a weapons type of thing, and so got familiar with all types of weapons, and but primarily the machine gun, M60 machine gun.
Were you so I'm trying to picture this because I a machine gun's pretty heavy. I feel like that
23,
would be a lot of work to carry around.
23 and a half pounds uh, without any rounds. And the
Yeah,
rounds come in a belt of 100 rounds.
right.
And I think it was around 4.5 to 5 pounds each. And so I'd have one on the gun and I'd have two more strapped around me. So yeah, it got heavy.
I mean, and for those listening, like 23 pounds may not sound a lot until you're walking through the jungle and you're stepping over, fallen trees or, whatever. It gets to be a lot of weight, especially when you're walking a pretty good distance. It ends up being a lot.
That in Vietnam, it was hot. So we had a
Yeah,
lot of
I
heat.
can imagine. So you go through your training, got all your training done. What's your first assignment look like?
Well, from there, went home on leave. So came back to Ohio and was home there for a while and then went back out to California for staging uh, to go to Vietnam. So the staging was just more training and uh, practice beach landings from a ship. But which is a funny thing because when I was in Vietnam, did two beach landings from ships, but didn't go by boat. Went by helicopters. And the
I bet
helicopter,
that was interesting.
yeah, because the helicopter didn't want to land. So, and you've
Can't
got,
imagine why.
yeah, so you got everything you own on your back, and carrying the machine gun and all the ammo and everything else. And he said, "You want me to jump where?"
um, yeah, I can't imagine why they wouldn't want to land. That would
Oh
it's
yeah.
just crazy to me. I actually have I have a one of my best friends. Him and I, we worked at a fire department part time together, and then we ended up working for the city doing EMS. And
Yeah.
he is a Marine. He is a veteran as well. And when you reached out to me, I immediately reached out to him and I said, "Hey, this is the date I got. I want you to be a co-host on it." And he was ecstatic. Like he was so excited because I mean he loves the Marines. He's all about the Marines, and especially to talk to a Vietnam vet, he was all about it. Unfortunately, the fire department that he works full time for now, they are getting some new equipment, and he's in charge of learning how to operate that equipment so that he can go to all the different stations and teach the other firefighters and medics how to use this equipment. So he unfortunately could not get the day off today, but I figured I'd give him a quick shout out. His name's Austin Jett, and give him a shout out because I know he's going to be listening to this, and he's probably going to call me up and be like, "You missed the most obvious questions that you should have asked." And I'm sorry, Austin, I'm not as great as you are, but so let's see. So you what I guess my big question is, so we've all heard the stories that during the Vietnam War, veterans were not well liked by the average population in America. What was the current pulse like as you were going in with the citizens versus the government at this point?
It, at that particular time, I mean, the war and the newspapers and everything were uh, always talking about the war. And they had filming things happening in war combat. But the uh, I just don't recall much. There certainly weren't any protests or anything like that in my little town where I lived, and I don't recall or don't remember probably at all of anything in any of the other cities in Ohio. I don't. I'm sure they had them, but don't, I just don't recall any of that.
Okay. Well, that's
The
good.
coming home was different. You know, that I remember
Yeah.
quite a bit, but but
Yeah.
but as I was preparing to go and as I went, it was um, no, the turmoil mostly was coming from my mother.
How deep into the war were we when you got in?
I um, I landed in Vietnam in October of 66, 1966. And so uh, I've been told more than once, "Oh, you missed the Tet Offensive. You're lucky." Yeah, I was lucky. I was only shot 3 times.
Oh man.
Yeah, but um, but we had quite a bit of action. So I mean, we had. I don't know if there was ever a lucky time to be there.
Yeah. How so you said you landed on the beach twice. How long was it the first time?
So um, the first time I did a beach landing, I'd been there about 6 months almost, and so when helicopters went in, didn't actually land on the beach like we would if we were going by a Amtrak, an amphibious tractor. But so the helicopters would go inland, further into the country a little bit, and then just find a clearing and drop us off, or we jumped off, or something like that. But and then we would, from there, then we'd move further into the country for a while. And so the first time we did that, there was a little action, but not too much. And then helicopters came back, picked us up, and we went back aboard ship. And we got closer, moved down shoreways, got closer to DMZ. And then we went back in after some time. And very same thing is that we went in by a helicopter, we jumped off, and then we moved into country further. And that second time was pretty dramatic. We didn't have any hostile fire when we first landed, but that evening, as you know, dusk was coming, and so we started to set up a perimeter, started digging our fighting holes, and I think I got about knee deep, I think. And my fighting hole started filling up with water. I thought, this is not good. And then shortly after that, we started getting attacked by artillery. So the artillery rounds were coming over from the DMZ. And so when that's happening, and the artillery sounded like, freight trains running into each other, crashing and stuff, plus the smell of the explosion and the shrapnel flying everywhere. And at the time when I was digging that hole, and I was smoking a cigarette, and after my dad died, part of my rebellion was to start smoking. And I was in a snack bar with a couple of buddies, and I'm in there, and being the Rhodes Scholar I am, the intellect, I was bragging about, well, I'd probably be blowing out smoke on my last breath. And I'm sure I said other stupid things, but that was pretty stupid. And but I recalled that during that artillery attack, and I was smoking the cigarette. I threw that thing away faster than I could think, and started blowing out that smoke out of my lungs to clear my lungs. And I asked God to forgive me for how I had been carrying on like a silly person. and the pain I left my mother in when I left for the Marine Corps. And I'm sure I prayed for keep those artillery rounds away from me. But that particular night, and the fighting hole, which was closest to mine on my right, received a direct hit. There were 2 Marines in there. So that was eventful, sad.
Yeah.
But after that, then the next day, after the ship started firing back to where the artillery was coming, and then of course the jets came in too, so stopped the bombardment that we were in. And then the next the next morning we left there and we started going further into country more.
You said earlier that you had gotten shot 3 times, is that right?
It was uh, a few days, maybe a week after we had landed, and I was attached to the first platoon, and so we were going out looking uh, the area over to where we were going to set up an ambush for the night. And but first we'd go out and then find the spot and then go out later after dark. And so we're doing that, and uh, and we were being shot at with small arm fire and mortar rounds, and so I dove behind uh, a worn out rice paddy dike, which was pretty much a deserted dike and had really worn away quite a bit. So there was very little protection from that. Uh, I saw a bomb crater over there. I thought maybe might be better off over there in that bomb crater. And but I thought, no, I don't want to get up and start running to the crater and then catch a mortar or something, right? I
Yeah.
I, I would have never been a very good halfback, so I didn't want to go out there trying to catch anything. And uh, but the mortar rounds was kind of interesting. The way they did that was like they were walking them up, and so I could hear them get closer, kind of stepping towards me, and uh, and it did. I got hit, and so and then as the again we called in, jets were called in. I don't, and then gave us an opportunity to move, and so with the help of a couple of the Marines, went back to where our platoon was and waited to be medevaced. And went to a field hospital and then to the ship.
Where'd you get hit at?
Uh, that that particular time, the mortar round just pretty much hit uh, most of my body, back a little bit back of the head and neck and shoulder, uh, in my hip and leg, and um, didn't break any bones, so that was good.
Yeah. It's lucky. Somebody was looking out for you.
Yeah, I lived to fight another day.
Yeah.
And we were at a it's we went through we spent some time at Cantillon, which was uh, some pretty severe battles there. But and then from there we went to an artillery base, which was also right along the DMZ, and I spent the whole time in what's called Leatherneck Square, which is a 54 square mile just south of the DMZ, and so I spent the entire tour there, and um, then I get hit by an artillery shrapnel again when I was there. So went to the field hospital for that. And then it was a month or so later, we were on um, there was a different company that had been ambushed. And so we went out to help them. And I was riding on the side of the tank and had the machine gun across my lap. And there's another Marine sitting off to my right. And as we're getting closer to where the attack had been, looked up there, and there's a 6x, which a truck. It's like a open bed truck, right? And so
Mhm.
you got all these Marines sitting in there. And so, these guys are just under attack. That's why we're there. And so it seemed kind of strange, thought, but also relieved, right? So you think, well, they must have secured the area. Everything's cool, and you just kind of sigh of relief, kind of. And about
Mhm.
that time, boom, we got attacked. And we were ambushed with an incinerating round at the tank. It hit the tank. Part of it penetrated the tank, injured the tank commander, but most of it just ricocheted. Hit the guy next to me in the neck. And when that did, all of his blood just went over me. And uh, and I felt the pain from being hit in my leg and my foot. And it just, burned right. Just got brand new boots. Just got some brand new jungle boots, and it destroyed them. And I was sad about that. And so the round went into to my foot and to my leg, and the blood was all over me. And pretty presumptuous of me, I guess, but I thought I was dead, and I felt myself rising through smoke and dust and everything. And then uh, the tank commander said, "Get off the tank," and because they wanted to swing the gun around, and so we had to jump off. But when he said, "Get off the tank," right away I knew that wasn't God yelling at me, and so I jumped. And then when I jumped, then I realized, yeah, I was hit.
Oh,
uh,
I bet.
yeah, from the pain of that. So I was medevac,
Man,
and then that was it.
where'd you get medevac to?
Uh, there was a place, there was a field hospital, it was called Wei Fubai, and spent the night there. And then I went by uh, medevac airplane to go back to the United States. And since I was from Ohio, at the time, there was a Great Lakes Naval Hospital in just north of Chicago.
Mm, okay.
So I spent several months there, uh, July to November, about Thanksgiving, I guess. And then I went to my new duty station, and uh, I was it was for training reserves, and but the main thing that we did was to notify next of kin when their Marine was either killed or wounded in action. So the Vietnam experience um, gave me wounds that you can't see, and it also gave me wounds you can see.
Uh-huh.
But notifying families that their Marine had been killed, um, that that left more wounds. Yeah, can't be seen as well.
Yeah. How long were you in the Marines for?
So my total time was a little bit over 4 years, and I had reenlisted, and so I was um, pretty much. I guess I was thinking pretty much of making the Marine Corps a career. And then I got the phone call from my brother that my mother was dying, and she had cancer, and so I knew that she was sick. And she had asked me if she passed before my younger brother and sister, uh, if they would if she would pass before they graduated from high school, if I'd be their guardian. I, of course I will. Like like I knew what I was doing, and uh, so they were young teenagers, and I was not much older myself at that time. So it, but she did die, and after the funeral, then I requested from the Marine Corps to be discharged to be their guardian, and they approved that, and I got out of the Marines. But the Marines didn't get out of me.
Yeah. Yeah, I believe that because even a buddy of mine, the one we were just talking about, Austin, I don't think the Marine will ever be out of him.
Yeah,
He's
right.
he's a Marine till he dies.
Yeah,
So you get out, I'm assuming on a hardship discharge. Is that what it would have been under?
yeah. It's convenience of the government, whatever that meant.
Yeah,
Horrible,
yeah, because the
horrible.
government is very convenient.
Yeah, right. Uh, but
What'd
the
you end up doing in from there?
well, uh, first I got a job in a factory, and boy, that didn't work out very well. I got fired, and then so I got another job in another factory, and by this time I had really smartened up, and so I quit that one before they got a chance to fire me.
Yeah,
But the I knew I wanted to go to college. I learned to do income taxes, and so I was doing taxes kind of part time for a while, and I, and so I got into college and majored in accounting. But I got the GI Bill, but to take care of my younger brother and sister and me. I mean, we needed more money than GI Bill.
yeah,
That
yeah.
helped with college, but didn't do it in the living expenses. So I continued to work, and um, so I started. Uh, I was doing income taxes plus did other type of part-time jobs, sometimes full-time jobs. So it took a long time to get through college, but I finally did. And then after I got through college, then I took the CPA exam, passed that, and then I was off to the races. always, always had my own self-employment on top of a job. So it wasn't a matter of, I never saw it like I'm pushing myself. I saw it as necessary. I need to do this.
Mhm.
And but definitely I pushed.
Obviously, at this time, PTSD is not a thing, or at least the term post traumatic stress is not a thing. How are you coping with what you went through in Vietnam through this process?
My I don't think my nightmares ever quit for a long time. I I was much older before I quit having some nightmares. But the it wasn't just the nightmares of combat, which some of those were, but also it was really, there was trauma created by the knocking on doors, and have a fallen Marine's wife come to the door with her baby. So those were difficult times, and they just kind of never went away. But the uh, it, I would never admit I had PTSD. I would never admit I was uh, had nightmares. I never told my wife I had nightmares. I would I wouldn't think about saying I can't handle it. It just it, it just wasn't what I was learned to do, taught to do. I got it, keep it, go, move on, work harder. I think that some of the times that I thought the problem is I'm just not working hard enough. Maybe that's what it is. And so I'd push on harder. And I'd always, if I was had a job working for someone else, I always had self-employment. So I always had tax clients on the side, or did accounting clients or tax, and always did that until I just finally just went into total self-employment. And then there's always plenty of hours to work in. And, uh, and so, I mean, it's like, 10, 12, 14 hours a day. So what? I can do that. I'm tough. And the same thing, every once in a while I do overnighters. Not so many as I got older, but, of course, in the younger days, overnighter was just, child's play. Of course I can. And there was no way in the world was I going to admit I needed help. And I think that is probably very dangerous.
And this whole time, you still haven't gotten a relationship with Jesus yet, have you? You're still kind of going solo here.
Uh, I went solo for, most of adult life. My wife and I went to church, but that was church,
Yeah.
you know, and so it took me a while to realize that I needed a spiritual walk with God. I need I needed to be close to Jesus.
What
And
was the final straw that made you realize that?
um I was it was a late night, and everything seemed to like to come to a head, but this was building up. It was a building up since I was a kid and in school when my dad died. But the whole thing is building up, and even as I became totally self-employed, it was there. I knew it was there, but I didn't know what I was missing actually. And and so it was late in my office. I was there. I was by myself, and during tax season, and it was getting pretty late. And I just reached down to my desk drawer. That's where I kept my bottle of scotch, and I pulled that out, and I rather used my glass, but I just took the bottle and drank from it, and I put it back down on the table. And usually, I get a little charge from my bottle was my crutch, I guess, my friend, and and so, but there's something just about it. It just to me started feeling not right, and so I reached it again, and I was going to take another drink, and that's when I remember I slammed it down on the desk, and oh, I remember yelling, "I can't do this! I can't do this anymore!" Something like that. I can't take it, and and then I prayed to God to forgive me for what I've done, and I spent some more time that evening, quite a bit of time, with my face on the floor and praying. But after that, then I mean, so that I mean, it was an event for me, but not quite like St. Paul being knocked off his horse, and going blind. But I think I didn't go blind, but maybe my eyes were opened more. And the next thing I'm kind of, it's not something that healed me, but it got me on the path towards healing. And more like a first step. And so I started writing about what in the world happened. Where, how did I get from a little kid who wanted to be a preacher to this mess I'm in now? And uh, so I just started writing to me actually, and then I stopped to think that, well, wait a minute. When I was in Vietnam, I wasn't there by myself. There were a lot of people there, and people went through the same thing I did. And and then I thought, even since then, look at the wars we've had, and how the servicemen and women are coming home with their trauma, and then even to expand it, you don't even have to be in the military. You don't have to be a veteran. You don't have to be a combat veteran. You don't have to uh, be a man. Anybody, men, women, children, can all have a serious bout of trauma and burnout, actually. And so I thought about what I was writing, and so then I took my memories and my pain and my redemption, and I poured that into a fictional Marine who I called Kevin Casey. And I just went through my memory and my pain and my redemption, and put and wrote about it. And then I created what I call God's recovery plan, which is it's in the book, but uh, I also published a workbook, kind of explained the workbook a little, the path a little more. But it's 8 elements, which are to go through. It's a discipline to walk through every day, and then it's all grounded in Scripture. So each one of the elements has a Scripture to go with it, and it goes on for 12 weeks. So the second week is the very same thing, except the Scriptures are different. The Bible verses are different. And so it does that for 12 weeks. And so the workbook is, being 8.5 by 11, is much easier to use than in a 9 by 6 book. And so that has been my path to recovery. I've been through it several times now. And every time I go over the Bible verses, I always get something new. It's something else is coming to me from that. And so it's really not about the checklist, but it's about practicing the presence of God on a day-to-day basis and just taking one step at a time.
It's very well said. Totally agree. I think, honestly, I think those are things that anybody, whether you're a veteran, whether you're first responder, whatever, some random person who's going through trauma or going through difficulties and just needs a little bit of help, I think that can help a lot of people. So how else are you helping people today? What's your life looking like now?
So I've started looking. I started reaching out uh, to churches and church groups as well as veteran groups, um, to introduce to them uh, program that I'm creating um, to work with groups to go through this, people with whatever their trauma might be. Because, like you said, I think it fits so many different types of trauma. But a lot of us have trauma, and um, it's it's so important, I think, to have a path to move from it, to move out.
I agree. I think when so this was probably 10 years ago or so. I was still working in fire and EMS, and I was having some difficulties, and I this was the first time that I had gone to a counselor. And I think the only reason why I went to a counselor was because uh at the time I had the understanding of, well, I guess that's what you're supposed to do. So I figured, well, what's it gonna hurt? I'll give it a try. And I walked into this office. I had just picked some random place off of Google. I walked into this office and I said, "Hey, I've got an appointment, whatever." And go into this guy's office, sit down, and I said, "All right, before we start, there's a couple things I wanna lead off with." So the first thing is I want some kind of plan to help these nightmares and these horrible thoughts just go away. I'm looking for some kind of plan. Number two, I don't want a label. I don't want you to diagnose me with something. Uh, I don't want to take meds. I don't want to do any of this stuff. I just want to be able to talk and get through this. I don't want the label because I still wanted to be a police officer at that time. And my thought was as well, if I have a label of PTSD or something else, that's going to hinder my chances of getting onto a department. So he agrees, and we sit down. We have these conversations. I tell him what scenes that I had been on that were causing me problems, and we're probably about 20 minutes in, and he goes, "Yeah, you got PTSD." And I said, "Dude, I literally just said I don't want the label." And he goes, "Well, I'm gonna have to diagnose you with it." And I said, "Then I'm gonna have to leave, and I'm
Yeah.
not paying for this session. Like, I'm not doing it. You're not listening to what I'm saying. You're just." And I understand where he was coming from. I was young and I was angry, and
Oh yes.
I knew what I wanted. And then it took several years before I felt like I could trust somebody enough to talk again.
Mm.
And I already knew that what I had, like I already knew what I was dealing with. And then you add all of the other horrible things that I dealt with on top of all of that. So the label didn't really matter to me at that point. But she introduced me to a program called EMDR, and I can never remember what it stands for. Electromagnetic, no, it's like rapid eye movement. I can't remember what it stands for.
Mm.
And I tell you what, that was probably one of the best things that I ever did was go through this EMDR process. And now
Yes.
at that same time, I was also starting to go back to church a little bit. Wasn't anything crazy like it is now, where I actually look forward to going. And it was more of a kind of like how it was when I was a kid. Like, I've got to go to church because my
Yes.
parents are making me.
All right.
but uh but mixing those two, putting those two things together, it helped quite a bit. And you and I talked a while back, when we were trying to schedule this, and um I had mentioned to you, I just lost my train of thought. um I had mentioned to you how this show started. And I had originally started this show with the main focus being nothing but mental health. Like, every episode, I was putting out at least one episode a week, maybe two sometimes. And every episode, didn't matter who the guest was, we were talking about mental health. And I think it was a guy, Anthony Schifferly, that I had on this show. He's a police officer, and I had him on, and I noticed that I wanted to talk about mental health, but he wanted to talk about something different. And it's not like we had that conversation of this is what I want to talk about, this is what you want to talk about. He clearly wanted to talk about something that wasn't mental health related. And I didn't catch it. And you could just tell that he really wasn't that interested. And then I started getting messages like, "Hey, I love that we're talking about this, but it's starting to affect my mental health because that's what we're talking about every single day." So I think the point is that what I'm trying to say is mental health is extremely important, and I think we all need to take it very seriously, but you also need to find that balance that you can't let your focus on trying to improve your mental health take over your life. Because
Mhm.
it gets to a point like with me, it got to the point where I'm talking about it trying to help others, thinking it's gonna help myself, and it actually ends up making my mental health worse. So that's why now I only talk about it every few episodes, but it's still an important topic, and it's still something that I think we all need to work on.
Oh, I do too, and I think that the path that I laid out, which I call God's recovery plan, hits several areas of life, and so but it's all what I like about it is it's not there's nothing in it new. You may hear it from um, like motivational speakers. Sometimes you may hear some of these things, but the difference of this is scripture based. And so it keeps me grounded in the Bible as I go through my daily life and daily things that I have to do. And even like the very first one on the list is action. And so when I plan every day, I plan each day, I plan it in prayer and God's guidance to, to get me uh, what I'm going to do. And so I write down a number of things that I want to accomplish in this day that I have prayed about. And whether I get 3 of those done or I get all 6 of them done in a day, when I'm done at the end of the day, I know that I did all I could do. And I don't, I close the book and I'm done for the day type of thing. Right. But it's not something that I say, oh my gosh, I need to do this or I need to do that and keep piling it on and create all the unnecessary stress that, necessary. And so, but that's how the workbook works. And I think that's good for my mental health. I think that is, without me focusing on, I need to do something for my mental health.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. Well, Keith, I got one more thing that I want to do. This is kind of a new segment that I started on this show. And I think it's been going pretty well. I think it's really, um, it's made a lot of my guests kind of sit back and think for a second. And I think it's helped a lot. So I call this segment the debrief moment. I've already been made fun of for it because it's not the greatest title in the world. My normal co-host, who's normally on here with me, who I'm gonna have to give him some crap because he hasn't been on like the last couple episodes I recorded. He has the excuse that he has to work. He works at a fire department full time, whatever. But he makes fun of me because he doesn't like the title. So I told him, well, then you come up with a different title, and he hasn't done it yet.
No.
So basically, what this is I'm going to ask you 2 questions, and I think this is something that everybody that's listening should think about for their own life and their own career. So we'll do 2 questions, and then I encourage the listener to kind of think about this for themselves if they haven't heard these already. Um, and maybe even consider pausing before they hear what answer you have to give to see see where they're at with life. So the first question, what is one assignment, one moment, or experience that changed the way you approach the job? So in this case, that changed the way that you approach life.
You know, I've spent the last 50 some years of changing my approach. Um, I would say definitely my major change in my life has been God's recovery plan for me and how I approach life in a disciplined, organized, Bible-based, spiritual way. Never putting all those things together at one time ever before in my life. And I would say that's what that is.
That's something that I'm trying to work on. I think this Bible study that I do every week is helping because it's making me actually read the chapters that we're going over for that week. And but I still feel like I need to do more. Like I need to read one of these days. I'm going to do the Bible in a year type program because
Mm.
I'm ashamed to admit I've never read the entire Bible. There's several books that I've never read, and I just need to get the discipline and actually do it. Um, so that's on my list of things to do. Question number 2. If you had a chance to meet your younger self, what is one piece of advice that you would give?
Just one, huh? uh, let's see. Maybe I'll start with my baseball bat. uh, I, wow. You know what? I think that if if only I could, right? If only I could. Uh, I go back to the day my dad died, and I would tell me um, you know, to to keep my trust in God. It's not, definitely it wasn't God's fault. My dad died. Um, and just remember that he's with you for 24/7. And so he's always there, and just cling on and don't be a stupid, rebellious kid.
I think we all go through that though. I think we all go through a little rebellion phase, and I think it's just part of life. It's something we all need to work on sometimes.
Yeah. I believe that that decision just really let's say I won't say it rocked the boat, but boy, I tell you, it really turned everything upside down and redirected my entire life. I mean, it would have been an entirely different life. Uh, no question about it.
Well, Keith, I think this was an excellent episode. Is there anything that we did not discuss that you feel like we need to talk about?
I, you know, I, of course, I want to thank you, Tyler, for for having me, and 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 thank you for this conversation, and thank you for all that you do and what you're doing with your program, it, reaching the people you are, and to your audience. If you're having issues with trauma, uh, super stress, or even burnout, just don't go alone. You always can find somebody you trust and trust them, and then you can talk with them. I, and recovery starts with that first step, that first conversation, I think. Um, but trusting is important, and not doing it alone. Whether you're talking to a therapist, a friend, a family, or even the clergy as well. But talk to somebody and remember, you're not weak. It's not weakness at all. Um, you can you start telling someone else your story, and you'll find out that's not weak. That's strong. So thank you. Thank each of your people in your audience. I want to thank them for listening as well.
Well, thank you. And for everybody else, just be on the lookout. Keith is just one example of some amazing guests that we have on this show. If you get anything out of it, I highly, highly encourage you, especially this episode. If you got anything out of this, please share this, like it, follow it. I got a lot of people that watch these shows and they're not following. So we need to try to fix that. I got some other things in the works. We're going to be doing probably, I don't know, maybe in the next couple months or so, working on some scheduling stuff, but we're going to have a group of firefighter spouses that are going to
So,
be on the show. We're going to have a roundtable session. There's a couple of them that I know very well, and I'm kind of scared on how these conversations are going to go, but I think it's going to be good. We're going to have a roundtable discussion. We're going to see life of a firefighter from the spouse perspective. So I think it'll be pretty entertaining. But Keith, again, thank you very much for joining me. It was awesome talking to you and hearing your story. And I hope things continue to go well for you and you can continue to help as many people as possible.
thank you, Tyler.